Good morning, traders. It is 8:08 a.m. Chicago time um, on Tuesday, the 12th of January, 2016. Apologies for the delays. It looks like YouTube's main streaming server is down, so I had to um, recreate the broadcast and resend it through the backup server, which we're on now. Looks like everything is operating properly. Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not indicative of future results. A fair amount of news again today. Disappointing data out of the UK has pushed the British pound to 5.5 lows against the dollar. November manufacturing production came in at negative 0.4 versus a gain of 0.1 expected. Industrial production slid to 0.7% to negative 0.7% month on month on expectation of 0%. Also, the cost of borrowing the yuan offshore has exploded upwards overnight as the PBOC intervened to support the yuan by draining liquidity. Overnight cost to borrow offshore increased to 66.8% from 5% on the Hong Kong market. WTI crude dropped to $30.41 to make 12-year lows. It has since surged almost $2 with a high of $32.14 on rumors that members of OPEC are calling for an emergency meeting. Now, if you recall, several members have called for meetings, and Saudi and a couple others blew that off. They've basically dragged their feet on doing something about the oversupply of crude oil in the market. Yesterday, Alcoa launched a quarterly earnings season with a 4 cent per share, coming in higher than the 2 cents expected, so it beat. Revenues fell, however, 17.8% to 5.25 billion, lower than the 5.3 billion expected. Also, yesterday, a bill has been introduced in the U.S. Senate by Rand Paul that demands an audit of the Fed. The bill has 25 of 60 votes required. Some of the sponsors of the bill include Marco Rubio, who's running for president, and also Ted Cruz. All three are Republicans. Um, and that's really it for news so far. Looking ahead for today, we have CBOE's Carney here in about 5 minutes, um, and also Weidemann. At 1 o'clock Eastern, 12 o'clock Central, we have EU Speaker Juncker at the EU Commission reception. And at 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central, ECB Speaker Lautenschlager in Frankfurt. And then at 3:15 Eastern, 2:15 Central, we have Fed Speaker Lacker on the economic outlook out of South Carolina. A lot of a lot of auctions today. 9:30 Canadian 12-month bill auction. 9:30 also UK announcement for their Gilt 2021 auction on 20th of January. At 10:30 Central, 4-week bills for 45 billion. And at noon, we're looking for a new 3-year note auction for 24 billion. Let's switch gears here and look at the action from the markets. Again, we have a 30. This is actually a 37.5 point overnight range. Yesterday's overnight range was 35 points. Yesterday, the primary hypothesis did not work out. The secondary hypothesis did. The primary hypothesis was expected to be a responsive selling back down into the prior day's value and then a push higher. Expected the market to rest, although we did have a weak low the prior day. That should have been a big clue that it's not likely to work out that way. But the expectation was for the market to push lower down into the 15 area to stabilize, and then was looking for to take out the overnight high, which was a double top at 28.50. and push higher. That was hypothesis number one. If you recall, the second hypothesis is exactly what happened. A push up to take out the overnight high. We did by 2 ticks. The high of the day yesterday was 29 versus 28.50 on the Globex session, and then a push down into the 15. Excuse me. Ooh, choking. Into the 15, and then with the potential of chop, and then look for it to push to 1175, stabilize, and then potentially take out the low for a rally. What it did, and it did do that, beautiful 2 tick failed auction up here. It took out the overnight high by 2 ticks, and then we immediately saw fairly aggressive sellers. Getting on that trade was difficult, was doable, but was difficult. You needed to recognize the failed auction fairly quickly. It's the first opportunity to get in was in here. Was much lower than I would have liked, but it's just gave away about 6.5, 7 points. And then from there, we're looking for the 15, which ended up being yesterday's point of control, but the 15 down here was the area I was looking for. If you recall, 15.25 was the MC point of control. I'll show you that here. Oh, let's look at it on the daily. The MC point of control, this is the balance zone from when we made those lows in August, those very aggressive lows. The point of control was 15.25. That's a key area to test from above. We tested it on Friday, and then when we opened higher, we retested it yesterday. We ended up closing just around it. We ended up putting a point of control on it. This shows that the auction is fairly orderly yesterday in that they're respecting these longer term levels. So once it pushed through, once it got down to the 15, it balanced like we expected to do, and the expectation was that it would take out the IB low for the IB stat. The IB stat is a 98% probability, 97-98% probability that the first hour's high or low would be taken out sometime during a session. With this, everything all was to the indication that the IB low would go. So looking for an IB low test, looking for a prior day low test, again a weak low here, both in volume and in price action, and then expected it to chop around down here and push up. And it did later in the session, but you really needed the patience of a yogi here. It kept squeezing lower all the way down to 92, and then once it got to 92, it tested up to the prior day's low right here. So this is really important to note, by the way. It is basically respecting, despite the fact that the rotations are very high, despite the fact that we know that a high time frame is in action pretty much every day since the end of December. And we see that in the very high rotations. In other words, it pushes in one direction with very little pullback. For example, in this chart, it's kind of squished, but the move from here, 1902.75 to 1892.50 looks so small, but this is 10 points of range. That's one rotation. The market moved from the 0275 to the 9250 without a single 6-tick pullback. These rotations, these zigzag numbers right there, the 3.75, 3.5, that the way the system works is it'll continue to measure that one rotation unless the market pulls back 6 ticks or better. Then it starts a new rotation. So when we get a number like 10 down here, you can't see it. It's obstructed a little bit. When we get a number like 10, we basically are seeing that it's pushed in one direction for 10 points without a single 6-tick pullback. We have a nice V bottom that formed a beautiful test of confluence here. Confluence was the low of the prior day at 1910. The close of the prior session at 1175, the IB low at 1250, the mid right there at 10 and a quarter, and VWAP, which is the cyan line at 10 and a quarter, goes right to it. At 10 and a half goes right to it and rotates down 13 points, basically 13 and a quarter points in this rotation. Once it put in a higher low, we see a higher time frame buyer step in and take this right up and through the mid back into the range, and then closing it right into the developing value area. 1915 being the point of control. 1915 again is in line with the longer term point of control in this region of 15 and a quarter. This basically sets us up for this action here. This action here sets us up for a continuation higher, and that's basically what we got as we came in this morning. So overnight, the action is fairly pronounced. Market opens, tests lower again down to the 1900, gets to 1899, and then Europe opens, and it's straight up from there. We have a weak high. This is a very weak high here on the high. This is likely to go, and the profile shows a trend day with multiple distributions. You can see that the market is not able to find any consensus on value, so it's pushing higher and higher. I changed the value area to be white against the dark background just so that when I zoom out I can see how value has moved. I've changed the day session to black on white, night session to blue on white, just for it to be more clear as I zoom out like this. So I can see the value migration. Let's clean this up. And we could see how value is moving, right? The day session lower, night session higher, day session in line, lower, night session lower, day session in line, night session lower, day session in line, night session in line, day session lower, and so on and so forth. We could see how value moves, and then we could see the range of those different sessions, the two distinct sessions, our the regular trading session versus the day session. So here's where we are. Currently, we're trading 33.75 with a naked point of control at 39. We stopped 6 ticks ahead of it at 37.50 overnight. Again, the overnight high is fairly weak, and so we're looking for this market to get responsive on the open. I'm looking for it to push lower. Key area to test here will be the 1920-22. I expect it to base, and I expect it to push that overnight high. If it pushes lower, now I'm going to be very clear about this. If it pushes lower early and it bases and it starts to move higher, I will send out a caution shorts. This is likely to be a short squeeze day. We're likely to see a pretty wide range going up despite the already wide range overnight. The market has taken off a lot of its longs, but it also has put on a lot of shorts in the recent sessions over the last 2 weeks or so. A lot of bears in the market, and it's likely to cause a squeeze pushing up. So I'm looking forward to do that. If it tests lower early without taking out the overnight high basis and starts to move up, then look for the overnight high to be taken out and look for it to re-enter the non-farm payrolls range above. So 46.50 all the way up. It cleans it up all the way up to that 64.75, 70 area. 70 is fair. You can see here the 70 has a pretty good price action resistance line right here at the 70. You could see the low and then the high, unable to test it from below, unable to, and then it's likely to try to squeeze to that area. If we see that the market opens and tests the overnight high and the point of control, chops around and moves lower, then it's likely to retest this value area. Notice yesterday's value area is valid. It's likely to retest this value area, and it's likely to move back down to the 15 MC point of control, yesterday's point of control, and to retest it down into the 1905 and possibly 1900. So that's what I'm looking for today as hypothesis 1 and 2. It's 8:23. Unfortunately, I started late with the technical issues, but a quick look at crude oil. Crude oil, as I said yesterday, the expectation was for it to start basing like it was here when I spoke about it, and then for it to start walking itself back up. And it has totally failed to do that, way off. It fell off yesterday and then continued to fall off today down to that 12-year low of 30.41 with a quick rip up on the OPEC news. So crude, very unpredictable. That hypothesis did not work out at all, and that's just trading. We're working on probabilities, and probabilities are not guaranteed and not 100%. We create new probabilities every day incrementally. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. I want to remind you again, I was not able to put together the event for Thursday, but I want to remind you there's an AMA, a public AMA on Thursday. I will send the link out. I've also launched my new website, my renewed website. It's responsive. Those of you who are members of the website can still access your content, I believe. I have not fully tested it. It was moved over overnight. It's a much faster server, and I'm going to be more active with a blog on there to continue the process of just pushing out good content, good professional content through the website. You'll see the invitation on there as well. If you're not a member, I suggest you go over there and look for the post to join the mailing list so you can be notified when events occur. Good luck today, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Take care.